What was the first time you ever did drugs?
The beginning of my story is pretty normal. You know, I started smoking weed going from 8th to 9th grade.
When does the meth come in?
So when I was 17. I believe it was between committing that crime, the assault on the police officers, and getting sentenced. So now I'm living in this hotel with my buddy, his now pregnant girlfriend, the mom, and me. I'm smoked out. The mom would eat meth. She's fucked up. My buddy's fucked up. Girlfriend's sober because she's pregnant. So I live there with them. And then when I'm living there, I start fucking the...
Do I call you Jimmy?
Yeah, you can just call me Jimmy. It's fine.
All right, so what were you saying? Public places?
Oh, I was saying,
addiction stuff?
As I get older now, I realize my sensory issues are so bad. Like if I'm in public, or if I'm at like an event, or like where there's music and there's people trying to talk to me, and it's like the lighting and like the audio, and just like I get so overwhelmed, and I don't know if it's from residual use. You know, they tell you like, oh man, don't do a bunch of acid because you're going to have problems for the rest of your life. And you're just sitting there eating acid like, oh, this is great, you know? And then you turn 30, 35 and you're like, man, I can't even go to a coffee shop if it's too loud, or I get an anxiety attack.
I can't handle leaving like an AA meeting with multiple people talking to me. Like I can't handle talking to multiple people at once at this point.
Oh, it's a lot, man. And like you were saying, like I get to the point where you're like, well, I kind of have to deal with this, you know?
Exactly. And this is Jimmy, the genius behind the Instagram Who Am You. We've talked for a long time just on Instagram. It's nice to actually see you and hear your voice. How you doing?
Yeah, for sure, man. Great. I feel like I know you without even knowing you.
Right, me too. You make amazing fucking shit on Instagram, and you're a painter and you're a musician. Like, what made you take the leap to... Also, I was thinking about this. This is my first question before we get into horrible... Women influencers, I think, get a bad deal. Like, Dopey listeners are like, you have too many women influencers on, and I feel like you're going to get a pass. Is it different to be a male influencer?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I don't even like the word.
Nobody likes the word.
I think there's a difference. I mean, and I'm gonna get shit just for having my opinion about anything, but you know, at this point in my life, I'm just gonna be me and say what I believe. Women can. Here it goes, dude. Women can rely more on. I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say it. So I don't see myself as an influencer.
Dude, you fucking hold on. Before you say anything, you post pictures of yourself shirtless and ripped outside of the gym constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly.
I know. I was about to backpedal and not say what I was going to say. Because it
what were you going to say?
I have to, like, for myself, I see my content that I make as like an extension of me as an artist. So I try not to just post shit because it's me. Like, oh, this is me. And you guys like me. So you guys have to like anything that I post, whether it's like me, just random shit. You know, I try not to do that. On my story, it's different. My story is just more like my life that I'm living. But as far as when I make a video, I want it to be like an extension of like me as an artist, like a my artistic endeavors, you know, my creativity put into a reel, you know, and I do that because I have my own, you know, standards. I have to reach for anything that I make, whether it's a painting or a song, like, so I tried to step away from just the cringy, like pushing out stuff, you know, like I want it to be creative. I want it to be like well thought out. I want it to be unique, you know? And I think a lot of influencers, and gender doesn't matter. That's why I kind of backpedaled from that.
Sure.
Sometimes they're just kind of like, they reach that point of, notoriety or attention where they're no longer like, putting creativity or putting time into the things that they're pushing out. They're just like, well, I have eyes. Let me just start pushing shit out, you know, where for me, I want it to be like a little, you know, like a well thought out cinematic, you know, thing that hits everything that I want it to hit, you know, even though it's like a minute long, you know, I still want to be proud of the stuff that I'm making creatively, you know.
Like the Coke chopping machine. What's your favorite, if you had to pick a favorite reel you've made, what was your favorite?
Probably I have one that has an Elliott Smith song on it, and it's Everything Reminds Me of Her. And it's the guy's like, hey man, I need that part for my car. You think you could call your guy? And then the other guy's like, call my guy. And I go into like a dream sequence of like weird events that happen, like through cocaine use, you know, like a memory bank. I like that one. Cause it's like, it's kind of artistic and it has like a cool soundtrack to it, and it's like creative, and it hits all my points.
It plays on the love that is addiction, but also how weird it sits in somebody in recovery. I was watching SpongeBob with my 6-year-old, and it was this episode where Mr. Krabs gets you know, like the crane to get stuffed animals out of the fucking machine, whatever.
Yeah.
And SpongeBob like does it. He gets the stuffed animal and he's done. And Squidward puts his quarter in the crane and can't get a stuffed animal and grows obsessed with the machine and starts borrowing money from everybody. Mr. Krabs gives him his pay in quarters, and he's fucking addicted to this crane. And I'm sitting there with my 6-year-old watching it, and I feel it's like that, you know, remember when, you know, I can call a guy for this car part. I'm feeling addiction, you know, 9 years sober, 50 years old, sitting with my 6-year-old because Squidward is totally addicted to the crane. Do you ever get, does that ever happen to you where you'll hear somebody say, like, cause your memes definitely, and your reels definitely recall classic addiction. Does it hit you?
Oh, like, does it, no, it doesn't, not like emotionally. It'll like, as far as like memory, or like I could intellectualize it, but as far as, are you getting a reconnecting error? Okay, there it goes. Am I back?
You're good.
Okay.
It records both of us until it's not. It's pretty good.
All right. Yeah. So I don't get like an emotional feeling to it. You know, like I could intellectualize the moments and my own memories and my own experiences, but I don't ever get like a sense of like I don't react to it where I'm like, oh, like, you know, I mean,
I don't mean your reels. I mean to like in that reel you were describing where like you go to the mechanic and everything reminds me of her, and he says, I need to call a guy for this. And then the guy you're playing remembers using. Do you have moments? I mean, how many years sober do you have?
It'll be 13 in July. So like 12 and a half.
Right. Congratulations. It's a long time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you ever get moments like weird fucking sketched out moments like that where someone says something and you're like, oh, and you think of those days?
Oh man, nothing I could think of. I mean, since you brought up a cartoon, as soon as you started bringing up a scene in a cartoon, it reminded me of a scene in a cartoon that I refer to a lot. When I try to explain to people, because people that meet me that only know me as sober, it's hard for them to understand how fucking sick I am as an addict, you know, because they just see this guy who's, you know, sober and like somewhat healthy and somewhat like successful, and like they don't understand. So I try to explain it to them by a scene in Finding Nemo. Have you seen Finding Nemo? So there's this scene where, you know, the sharks have made amends with like the fish, and they're like friends. They're like these happy, friendly sharks, and they're like, oh, they're our friends. And one of the fish gets hit, and like a little bit of blood comes up in the water, and it goes up the shark's nose, and his eyes fucking dilate, and he goes, that's good. And then he's just like right back to wanting to eat fish. I tell people a
Yes.
lot, like that's how I am with, you know, like I could be totally fine, like fish are friends, not food. And then if I was to, you know, drink a beer or take a little hit of meth or something, like it would go right back to like full blown, like, oh man, crime is fun, you know?
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Riverside, California.
And you're in Riverside,
Yeah,
California.
yeah, I'm still in Riverside. Yeah. It's a
What
pretty heavily, infested area.
What was the first time you ever did?
Um, so I have I mean, the beginning of my story is pretty normal. You know, I started smoking weed, going from 8th to ninth grade. And then at the time, I didn't realize what I was doing. But looking back, I was self-medicating for whatever emotional issues I had, you know? So I smoked weed and I was like, oh, I like this, you know? And the reason I liked it was because it made me not feel like myself, you know? So then I tried.
What kind of emotional issues you think?
I just grew up with like I had a trouble just dealing with any emotion, you know, like sadness or anger or like my mania is so crazy, you know. And as a kid, when you're dealing with mania, it's really confusing because no one is like sitting you down and being like, hey man, you got something going on with the chemistry in your brain, you know. It's more like you're getting reprimanded, like you're a bad kid, you're a bad student, you know, you almost get treated like you're acting this way, like out of spite or something, you know, when you just aren't able to, for whatever reason, manage how you feel, you know, and I'm kind of an extreme case of that, my whole life, you know. And so when I found, it kind of took me out of having to deal with those, you know, it just kind of made me high, you know. So it started with weed and I was like, oh, well, weed is cool. I like how weed makes me feel. And, I mean, looking back, I liked how weed made me feel because it didn't make me feel like me anymore, you know? So then I
could relate to that. No, I had the same thing. I was just so neurotic, and I needed like an answer for my thoughts.
Yeah.
And weed was my favorite answer for my thoughts.
Yeah.
And what happened after that?
And then
And you don't have to feel free to like deviate from like classic storytelling to fucked up stories, and feel free to feel comfortable. Like, you don't have to worry about like carrying the message that hard.
Yeah. No,
I mean, it's good to carry the. I'm not trying you not to carry the message.
it's always snuck in there.
Yeah, of course.
So then I started drinking, and you know, so then now I'm drinking and smoking weed, and I'm like, oh, this is a good combo too, you know. And then I start exploring, you know, the medicine cabinet at the house and find some Vicodin, and now I'm smoking weed, eating Vicodin, and drinking alcohol, and I'm like, and by this time it's probably, you know, 10th grade, and I'm like, oh, this is great, you know. Now I'm mixing everything together, and then I start mixing in over-the-counter cough medicine in like super high doses, and with the weed and the alcohol and the pills. And then around that time is when I came across cocaine. So I started doing cocaine.
Hold up, though. Let me ask you before that. When you first discover the cough medicine, is your crew like, you should drink cough medicine?
No.
Like, who introduces you to?
So there used to be this website. It might still be a website. It was called Erowids. Do you remember Erowids?
Sure.
So
Of course.
I went on Erowids, and it was basically a information website, you know, and it had everything from like super rare psychedelics to you know, mushrooms, acid, meth, and it would have like user reviews, basically. Like people would do these different, and then there would be like a forum of people's trip experience and shit, you know. And there was a section on Erowids that was like household that you could access that would get you high. There was like shit on there like nutmeg in high doses could cause some sort of like trip, you know, but all the reviews were bad. Then there was like morning glory seeds, which is like LSA, which is like a close neighbor to LSD. It's basically an LSD trip without the euphoria, which I was like, oh, and all those experiences were like horrible. And there was like the weird shit, like old banana peels with toothpaste and like whatever it was. But I remember coming across dextromethorphan, which is the main ingredient in over-the-counter cough medicine. and reading it, and I was like, oh man, this sounds, pretty good. Like it was all like, because dextromethorphan had, once you cross a plateau of dosage, it's no longer a cough suppressant and it becomes a disassociative. So I went and I got a couple.
Totally. I guess I wait, hold up. Let me ask you something else. Like, when do you think you're like, I want to read Erowid? Like, when do you become a kid that's like, Erowid is like, how do you get to Erowid in the first place?
I don't remember how I got there, but I've always had like I convinced myself, and maybe there was some truth to it, that I was interested in the exploration of my own mind, and I was using substances as a way to like explore myself, And I remember we had a book. Me and my friends would go to Barnes and Noble and we'd shoplift books all the time, and somehow we ended up with this book, and I imagine this was before Erowid's, but the book was called Breaking Open the Mind, and it was about psychedelic and like internal growth, like spirituality. So I think it might have came from that book, my curiosity about like self-exploration and substance abuse being tied in with each other, And then from there, I probably Googled and then ended up on Erowid's, and then came across.
I feel like that's a major turning point in every drug addict's life when Erowid becomes like the thing.
Oh, it was,
like,
dude, I was all over it.
Yeah, the guy who I started the show with, who died, was obsessed with Erowid. And Erowid is, I think I might have looked at it. I don't remember, but I think I was older. So by the time it was around, I was just, I wasn't on the computer or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just think like, I want to hear like the story of like 14-year-old America and like the correlation between when they're like, Erowid is my shit, and how many of them become horrible drug addicts.
Well, I think it actually it goes back a little, like a step before that, where I got, and this is interesting because no one's really asked me that like those small details. I somehow got this book called Culture Jam. It didn't have anything to do with, but it had to do with like American society and capitalism and branding and corporate America and basically creating some sort of like, it's been a while since I read it, but it kind of opened my eyes to how corrupt government and capitalism was in America. And this was a book I read when I was in the 9th grade, and I was just like, read this book and I was just like, man, this is, and I think somehow that book catapulted me in a certain trajectory, where I was like, okay, well, society's fucked, and I just kind of took like I was more on the fringe, at a young age, and then from that book, I think
it's very interesting. Yeah. Like, go for it.
And then I think from that book, I realized like, oh, books. I think that was the first time when I realized like, oh, books can teach you things that schools will never teach you, that are still reasonable and are still real, but you're not going to get, my parents aren't going to teach me this stuff. Like, schools aren't going to teach me that. No one's going to, but these books have all this information, and sometimes the information is if it's not productive for the institution to teach you the book, then they're not going to teach it to you, So I think that's probably was the first step to how I ended up to that psychedelic book, because I was like curious about information that wasn't going to be given to me anywhere else,
Totally. And these are like the building blocks of like creating you as a defiant artist who happens to become a horrible drug addict.
Yeah.
But it's the same building blocks, right? It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So you're on Erowid, you're drinking cough medicine, you're drinking alcohol, you're smoking weed. Take
so
me. I might just jump in here and there because I'm curious about these things.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember the first day. So the first day I really got high. I mean, there was weed high and there's alcohol and there's Vicodin, but the first time I experienced like a paradigm shift within my own consciousness was from dextromethorphan, from cough medicine. And I had read about it on Erowid, and my curiosity was growing, and I ended up going and getting a couple bottles of Robitussin. I remember my parents were at work, or everyone was gone for the day, and I smoked some weed. I drank these bottles of Robitussin. I remember I took some codeine, Tylenol with codeine. I took a few of those. I drank the Robitussin. I'm sitting on my PC. I've always been a big computer guy. I've been on a computer fucking my whole life, but I'm sitting on my PC. I have headphones on. I'm listening to music super loud. And that's an interesting thing too, because music and drugs were always tied together for me too, as I'm sure with most people. Yeah. I'm sitting there and I start getting like this euphoria and like this fucking, just this warm feeling in my stomach, and like it was my first time experiencing like drug euphoria. And I'm sitting there listening to music, and I'm just like, the music got clearer, and like my emotions are like now tied to the music, and I'm just sitting there with my eyes closed, like, I feel so fucking good. And although I had been doing up until that point, I think that was the moment that I was like, like, this is great. I fucking love this. Like, this is who I am, And so I tripped, the rest of the day, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, this, whatever is going on, like, I was not expecting that experience that day. And I ended up having this, as much as it's addiction, this profound experience on this DXM. So, I mean, like any normal teenager would do, I went and I told all my friends. I'm like, yo, you guys have to do this shit, So I ended up introducing, probably like 5 or 6 of my friends to DXM, and we started robo-tripping, and then it, it progressed into like a more concentrated form of DXM, which was called Coricidin, cough and cold, triple C's, they call it. So we just became full blown addicts for DXM. Like, we were sick. We all looked thin, or like we were doing this shit all day, every day. And then,
like, how old?
I'm probably 16 at this point.
Right.
And
right.
I'm
and it's full on blueprint. Full on.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I'm doing DXM every day. And then I end up doing cocaine. I was dating a girl. She was my age. So I'm probably 16 or 17 at this time. And I go to hang out with her one day, and she's like, tells me she had done coke the day prior. And I was pissed. I was like, dude, what the fuck? We don't do coke, But simultaneously, I was like, I want to do coke now, like in the back of my head.
Wait, why though? Why don't we do coke at that point?
Just because it was I don't know. Just because it was a harder, I think it maybe because it was foreign. I don't remember. I just remember.
And it's not not a hippie, right? It's not a psychedelic. It's not weed. It's not like a soft.
It's an ego,
right.
for
I think
sure.
that's funny though, because right, and when you're a kid, and especially if you're reading shit like that culture jamming book, you have these kind of doctrines in your head of what's acceptable, and maybe coke doesn't check those boxes in the same way.
No, definitely not. But still, now I'm like, one person away from cocaine, from cocaine use. And it was the person I spent all my time with, pretty much, So I think like the next day we were at, and this is fucked up, we used to hang out at this kid's house, and dude, so I was 16 and this kid was 10, and it was this neighborhood in my city, and it was all like a bunch of like addicts, like, no disrespect, they're all cool people now, but one of the houses was this kid's house, and his mom, she was probably like 50 years old, and the kid was 10, and they partied at this house, and the mom would do cocaine with all the kids in the neighborhood and her kid, who was 10 years old at the time. So we were over there smoking weed, and someone, pulls out a bag, and this is like the next week or next few days or whatever, from my girlfriend telling me she had done it. Someone's racking out a line, and I'm like, well, I was like, I want to try it, and so I end up, doing my first line of coke in the bathroom of this house with this fucking lady and her 10-year-old kid and my girlfriend and some other kids that were my age. And then from that moment, now I'm hooked on coke, along with all the other shit. So now I'm mixing everything together with cocaine as a little cherry on top.
How often are you getting the coke though? Because that's got to be pricier than everything else.
Every day we were doing it.
How?
Sorry, I had a Zin in my mouth.
That's okay.
We instantly became criminals, like right off the bat. I remember we watched a movie, and this was before I had done meth. We watched a movie called The Montana Meth Project. And in that movie, the tweakers are doing scams. They're doing receipt scams at department stores. And we're like, well, that's pretty fucking easy. Like, that's a genius idea, So we instantly, from doing cocaine, we started stealing and getting the receipts and returning it and getting store credit and doing all that shit. So we were 16, 17.
Hold on. Explain the scam, please.
Okay, so there's levels to it, as I became more advanced. But the basic concept of the scam is you go to, like, let's say Home Depot, you walk around the parking lot, you pick up receipts. We'd go back to the car, we'd all have our receipts that we found, and we'd find accessible items that are the most high priced on the receipt. So let's say on the receipt, there's 4 screwdrivers, a pair of pliers, and a crescent wrench, and it equals, $120. So we'd go in the store. The receipt has the SKU number, on each item. We'd take the receipt. We'd find the exact item. We'd get the item. We'd steal it. Someone would go back in with the receipt, and they'd return the items with the receipt, and they'd get cash. And then that's how we were getting cash. But then
I talked to some guy this week who would do that at a supermarket in Florida, and I never heard of this scam. It's fantastic. How long did you get away with it for?
All the way until my sober day. For years.
Okay.
That was like the entry level of the receipt scam, and then over time passed, I learned like quicker, bigger, more productive ways of doing the scam. It got to the point where I was like, I would go to Blockbuster, which had no security, but Blockbuster sold Blu-rays. And when Blu-rays first came out, they were like $35 a piece. So I'd go into Blockbuster where there's one poor little middle-aged woman working, and I'd have a messenger bag. My thing was always a messenger bag because I could put stuff in it and it doesn't look suspicious like a backpack. I'd go into Blockbuster, and they would have like at the end of the aisles, they'd have Blu-rays, and I would just go in there and I'd steal like 40 Blu-rays, which I'm not a big math guy. That's a lot of money. Because then
it's amazing.
I found out.
And you're a kid, and you're fucking. Keep going, please.
Because I found out that you could return items to Walmart without a receipt and get store credit. And the items don't have to be from Walmart. The SKU number from an item at Walmart, Target, Stater Brothers, if it's the same item, there's no differentiation between the place the item came from. So I would find easy places to steal it that had bad return policies, steal a bunch of shit from there, and then have people take stuff. I had like a small army of people that would return stuff for me and then get store credit full price, So I'd get these Blu-rays and then have someone go into Walmart and return them for me and get like, $300 gift card. And a Walmart gift card it's weight in gold, for a drug dealer.
So would a dealer give you full value on a Walmart gift card?
No, it was partial value. So let's say it was like 60%, but it was fast. But also what the gift card would give you access to. So let's say you find a receipt at Walmart that's for a Dyson vacuum, which you can't steal a vacuum, but it's a $300 vacuum in a giant box. Now you take these Blu-rays into Walmart, get the $300 gift card, go and buy the Dyson vacuum with the gift card. But now you have a cash receipt that you found in the parking lot, and you go back in Walmart with the cash receipt, return the Dyson vacuum, and get the $300 in cash.
Amazing. It's like that YouTube guy who takes a penny to Paris and flies home or whatever.
Yeah.
You can turn these things into more money. And so like you're a kid and you're becoming full on, and like, how is the addiction settling in? Do your parents notice? Who's noticing? So
the cocaine they didn't notice yet. They knew something was up with the cough medicine. So when I was 17, I went to rehab. And that's a whole long story of itself. But I ended up going to rehab for cough medicine.
We have time. If it's a good story, please tell us.
It's a great story. So I was doing cough medicine every day. Like, I would wake up, I would have whatever pills I would have from the night before. I would eat my 16 Coricidins. I'd walk to Vaughn's. I would steal 2 bottles of Delsum, which is dextromethorphan, but it's like a time released version. They have like some sort of like synthetic, like edible plastic around the molecules of DXM. So you could drink the DXM, but it would release over time, So I would take the pills to get the hit, and then I would have just like a slow acting DXM, and then I'd go to school. And it was like that for a while. Like, I was like, my face was so skinny and dark, and like my eyes were like, I had like bags under my eyes. I was strung out it was just on cough medicine though, So my parents knew.
On Delsum. Yeah, you rarely hear about that.
Yeah, Delsum and triple C's, But it got so bad. I was taking so much shit all the time that my body would start rejecting like, if I was trying to take triple C pills, like my body would be like involuntarily like trying to vomit before I even, like, just the pill going to my mouth, like my body was like, no, So I found out that Delsum was like one that I could just like stomach, it's this orange citrus flavor. So I would just drink the Delsum and then take the pills that I could. But yeah, I was bad. It started, I started having, auditory hallucinations all the time. And I would, like, 16, 17 years old, going to high school, just a full blown addict with auditory hallucinations, like up all night, tripping balls and committing crimes and like doing all this shit. And then like would show up to school where everyone else is like living this like normal life. And I'm just out there already, doing this whole other thing. So it got bad, and my parents ended up finding out that it was cough medicine. I have a family member who's, he's pretty well known in the intervention world. Like out in LA and Hollywood, and, for like high profile clients. He had been doing that for a long time. So he ended up getting me a bed in this rehab in Malibu Hills. It was like, I want to say it was like $3,000 a week, but he got me on some sort of scholarship because he knows all the, directors and all that shit. So they like waived all of it for as far as I know. And it's in Malibu Hills. It's like on this canyon, like looking over the ocean and like these hills, So he gets me a bed there. I eat a bunch of cough medicine and we drive to this rehab. I have no idea where Malibu is. I don't know what rehab is. I mean, I know what rehab is, but it's a new experience, But I'm lit out of my mind on going to the rehab. So I get there, and they're like, right when I get there, they start.
Wait, hold up. You're 17, and what drugs are you on the way in? And how many? And like, did you take them on the drive? And did your how did your parents know you were all lit up on cough medicine?
I don't remember. I imagine they started finding the bottle. I mean, they knew I was on something because it was very obvious that I was on. But I want to say they started finding the empty pill pop outs for triple C. And like empty bottles of, because no matter how good of a drug addict you are, you're going to leave your paraphernalia, shoved under your mattress or,
Yeah.
So I imagine it was something like that. And so we go, and then I think I had just started doing cocaine. But the real problem was the cough medicine more than the cocaine at the time. So I get high on the way to to rehab. Like I drink some Delsum and I'm like, fuck. I remember laying in the back of my mom's Saturn, just like tripping balls, just like driving for hours. I'm like, whatever, dude, I'm going to rehab, And at the time, I don't even have a concept of a withdrawal. Like I don't realize you withdraw from when you stop taking them. So I'm just like, oh, whatever, I'll go to rehab. So I get to this rehab. It's like this crazy mansion up in the mountains. Like I said, it's like there's like mahogany staircases and like there's a chef cooks every meal. They do like yoga once a day on the edge of this canyon. It's like this crazy thing, I'm there for like right when I get there, they start giving me like psychiatric medication. They had like a sheet. They're popping these pills out into a little paper cup, like we all know. And, they're like, here, take these. And I'm like, just taking them. I'm like, okay, whatever, And, probably like 2 days, I don't realize at the time, but I'm withdrawing now. And I'm like, I have like crazy anxiety. I can't sleep. I'm sweating. I'm freaking out. And I'm like, yo, I'm leaving. I don't want to be here. And I remember sitting in the living room of this rehab and I'm like, can I leave? And they're like, by law, we can't restrain you because you're a minor and you're here on your own recognizance or whatever, they tell me that. So I'm like, so if I get up and walk out this front door right now, you guys can't stop me. And they're like, no. So I get up and I walk out of this rehab, but the staff is like chasing me. So I'm like running down the road and I start picking up rocks. And now I'm in like a full blown, like I'm halfway in like my psychosis where I was having like auditory hallucinations and like all this crazy shit. And then half in a withdrawal. And then now this medication they're giving me is starting to kick in. So I'm like psychotic. So I start picking up rocks and I'm throwing them at these staff members as they're chasing me. I run down in this canyon and there's a house in this canyon. And I go to this front door of this house and I open up the front door of this house and I go inside of this house while these people are chasing me. And I like go in and it's like a house like people are living in. Like, thank God no one was there. But I remember there was like shoes by the door and the AC was on and there was like a TV on. And I run in this house and I go into the bathroom and I hide in the bathtub. I hide in the bathtub for a little bit until I think things calm down out there. And I come out, I start walking through these canyons. I come up to like...
Hold on, that was just some random stranger's house?
Yeah.
And nobody was there?
It was just random...
And nothing ever happened?
Well,
you survived it.
It comes up later in the story.
Okay.
So I end up walking up this canyon, up this hillside, and I come to a street. And I think these are all like famous Malibu streets, like Mulholland Drive. And I come up on the street and there's like 20 cop cars on this street. And I walk up and they all look at me and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, I'm not getting, so they walk up to me, they handcuff me. They take me to the rehab and they're like, okay, dude, we're going to give you another chance. There was 2 separate houses up in these canyons. That was the same rehab. They're like, we're going to give you another chance. We're going to take you to the other house. So I'm like, all right, whatever, So they take me to the other house. I'm at the other house for maybe another day and I'm being a pain in the ass. So they end up calling my uncle that got me, or it's actually my dad's cousin, whatever that is to me, my cousin who got me the into the rehab, So he comes and we're sitting in the back and I'm like, dude, I don't want to be here. Like I want to leave. Like I don't want to do this. And, he's like pissed off and he's like, dude, this is as good as it's going to get, man. Like I got you. I pulled some strings, and I remember like I got irate and I was like, fuck you, dude. I don't want to be here, and I got up and I started walking. I started walking away from this rehab. So now I'm walking down the street and the staff members start following me in like a minivan. So they're following me in a minivan. There's a guy walking next to the minivan and they took my shoes at the rehab because now I'm a flight risk. So I'm running down this street, this like random like windy road in like the random Malibu hills, you know, and they're just following me in this van, this staff member, you know, trailing behind, and I'm like giving it all I got, and they're just like right behind me, you know. So I start picking up rocks again off the side of the road, and I'm throwing rocks, and they're hitting the windshield of this van. It's like almost hitting the guy walking. So the van pulls back, and up where these hills are at, it's like super windy roads. So the van pulls back. We go around a wind, or I go around a wind, and the van is out of sight. Well, right as I go around this winding road and the van can't see me, there's a steel storm drain going down the side of this fucking hill with a bunch of sandbags in front of it. So I run up to this storm drain. I move the sandbags. I crawl down this storm drain. I move the sandbags back in front of the storm drain. And I crawl down the storm drain. Well, the storm drain goes down the side of this mountain. It comes out, and then there's another storm drain going underneath the mountain. I crawl into that storm drain, and now I'm just hiding in this like man-sized storm drain. No shoes. Now I'm filthy, you know, because I'm crawling in like mud and dirt and shit. All like fucked up, withdrawing. I'm sweating. I'm crying. I'm like fucked up. So now I'm hiding in the storm drain for a little bit, you know, let's say an hour. I end up crawling out the storm drain, and now I'm just hiking through these mountains. And for people who've never been to Malibu, like, it's not a very populated area. It's like up in the mountains and the canyons, it's just nothing. It's just like brush and hills and like nothing as far as you can see. So I start hiking through these hills. I got no shoes on. I'm just like, I remember breaking the brush. There's like branches catching my face. It's just like, I'm not like on a path. I'm like just going through these fucking mountainsides, you know? I come up to this, it's like an abandoned mansion in the middle of nowhere. There's like not even a road going to it. It's just like this mansion with no windows or doors on it. I go in there, I'm like walking around, you know, like, you know, I leave there. That's not an important part of the story. It's significant in my own head, you know? So now I keep walking through these mountains, and then now all of a sudden these like mountains I'm walking to becomes this other mansion's backyard. Like there's like it's a gated house, but their backyard is essentially just open hills, you know? So I walk in, and I'm in this property. There's like an alpaca and llama farm. It has like a cage with like alpacas and llamas in there. And there's a white Dodge Neon parked on the yard side of this wrought iron gate. And I walk up to this Dodge Neon, and the keys are in the ignition of this car. So I'm like, fuck, you know, like this is exactly like, what are the chances that I'm trying to escape somewhere and I come across a car with the keys in the ignition? So I don't end up stealing it. I hop the fence, and I start walking up the street. I'm walking up the street for a little bit, and I start thinking, I'm like, yo, that's my ticket home, that fucking car, you know? So I turn around and I walk back to that house. Well, when I got to that house, there was like this old Mexican guy, like you know, that didn't speak English, outside feeding the animals. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like, so I ask him, I'm like, hey man, you think I could use your phone? And he's like, I don't live here, man. He's like, he says it in like broken English. He's like, I don't live here. He's like, I just feed the animals. And I'm like, all right, man. So I start walking up the street. So now a few hours probably passed. I'm like covered in mud. I have socks on. I've like cuts on my face. My hands are bleeding from like breaking branches. And I'm walking down this random canyon up in the Malibu hills somewhere, trying to hitchhike. There's like no cars driving by. I'm just walking down the street. Well, probably like an hour passes, and I'm trying to hitchhike, and that fucking Dodge Neon that I was about to steal pulls up and pulls over to fucking give me a ride. And it's that old Mexican guy. I'm like, what the hell? So I jump in his car, and he's like, what's up, man? He's like, where are you going? And I'm like, wherever, man. Just take me wherever you're going.
Just get me off this mountain.
Yeah. So he's like, we start driving, and he's like, what are you doing up here? And I was like, oh, I was with some friends, and like we got in an argument, and they left me. And he's like, okay. He's like, well, I could take you to the bottom of the mountain. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's fine. And I didn't know at the time, but it was in Ventura. So he ends up taking me to Ventura off like some random freeway. He drops me off at an El Pollo Loco. Well, I get out and I'm like, okay, well now what, you know? So I remember there was a Rite Aid across the street. And my initial thought was go steal more cough medicine. So I walk across the street. For whatever reason, I don't end up going into Rite Aid. And it's probably because I didn't have shoes on. But across the street, there was a karate school where a bunch of kids were doing karate, and they all had their socks and shoes outside of the karate studio. So I walk by this karate studio and I just start grabbing socks, and I just start putting on like a bunch of pairs of socks, you know. And I walk across the street
because you don't have shoes.
Yeah, I don't have any shoes on. This whole adventure, I have no shoes on.
Yeah.
So I walk across the street. I go to a gas station. And I ask them, I'm like, hey, do you guys have a phone I could use? And they're like, no, we don't have a phone, but there's a pay phone across the street or like on the other side of the parking lot. I'm like, I don't have any money. So I stand on the side of the street and I'm trying to hitchhike on the side of this random road in Ventura. And this like middle-aged woman drives by and I'm like, you know, I'm crying. I'm like all fucked up looking. And I'm a kid, or I am a kid, you know? So she's looking at me and she's like horrified, like, what is going on right now? So she ends up giving me like $30. She's like, here, I don't know what you could do with this, but here's $30. So I go to the payphone and I call my girlfriend at the time. It's the same girl that I had done coke with for the first time, you know? And I'm like, hey, you need to come pick me up right now. And she's like, what? She's like, you're supposed to be in rehab. I'm like, dude, I left. Just come pick me up. I tell her exactly where I was at. I tell her the exact cross streets I was at. Well, she ends up calling someone, asking them how to get there. That person ends up calling my parents and telling them exactly where I'm at. My parents end up calling the rehab. The rehab ends up calling the cops. But I don't know that at the time, you know. So I call her. I tell her to pick me up. I go back in the gas station and I ask for a phone book because now I'm like, oh, I'm going to try to call a taxi to Riverside from L.A., with $30, which, you know, is
with $30.
Yeah, not going to happen, you know.
Unlikely.
Yeah. So I get a phone book. I go in front of the gas station. I'm sitting cross-legged. I'm crying. I remember sitting there crying and like I couldn't read the phone book because my eyes just kept filling up with tears, you know. I'm sitting there going through the phone book and the cops drive up. I'm like, fuck. There was a male cop, like a big white male cop, just like the, you know, cliche cop, you know, 6'3", big white mustache, clean cut white guy, you know, big white guy, and a chick cop. They walk up to me. He's like, hey, man, are you James? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, man. He's like, get in the fucking car. And I remember he was being a dick. I mean, not that that's important, but he was being like very abrasive. He's like, all right, man, get back in the fucking car. We're going to take you back to your rehab or halfway house or wherever the fuck you came from. And I looked up at him and I'm like, I'm not getting in that car, dude. And he was like, oh, he's like, so you're telling me you're going to resist arrest? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So he walks up behind me and he puts my arm in a chicken wing, which in high school I was in wrestling for a little bit. So instinctually I know the counter for a chicken wing is so easy. Especially like I'm sitting, he's standing, he gets me in a chicken wing, and I just end up going like this, and I flip this cop onto his back.
Oh boy.
Yeah, just like it happened like that, you know. So now me and this cop are fucking wrestling. Somehow we get in this position where my legs are wrapped around his neck, like I have his neck in like a triangle choke with my legs, and his face is like, you know, my legs are around his neck, and his face is like turning red. And he stands up, you know, because I'm, you know, probably 130 pounds. I'm a kid. He stands up with me choking him out around his neck. And he slams me down onto the ground and it you know, breaks the choke. While this is going on, the chick cop, I remember hearing her like frantically like calling for backup. She's like freaking out. So I'm wrestling with this cop. I end up on my stomach. He's like trying to get me. And then when I'm getting on my stomach, more cop cars start pulling up, you know. So other cop cars start pulling up. The cops start surrounding me. I keep trying to get up and they keep pushing me down to the ground. But my adrenaline is so crazy. I must have like had the strength of, 100 drug addicts. So I'm trying to get up.
130 pounds.
Yeah. I'm trying to get up and they're hitting me in the stomach, trying to, I imagine, knock the air out of me. I keep getting up and then I just get a boot to the face and just get knocked unconscious. And, I end up like regaining consciousness and, I'm handcuffed. My legs are zip tied together and 2 cops are carrying me. They just tossed me in the back of a cop car. And then I remember sitting up in the cop car and looking at the rearview mirror, and like my eye was like the size of a baseball. It was just like, I laid back down. Yeah, they fucked me up. I laid down. I fell asleep. I wake up. I'm in a hospital bed. I fall asleep again. I wake up. I'm in like an orange jumpsuit in a holding cell. I fall asleep. I wake up again, and I'm in a boy's shoe in special housing unit in Selmar Juvenile Hall. They put me in like a 24/7 watch because of the crime. I was they put me as like a risk. So now I'm in there, and then now the withdrawal really starts. Now I'm like, dude, I'm just dripping sweat the whole time. I'm like shaking and overheating and falling asleep. I was on like a plastic bed in this middle of a day room. Then I go to Corey. I end up only being in that Selmar Juvenile Hall for a week. And then they released me, like on my own recognizance, and then I fought the case for over a year. Cause when I got out of that juvenile hall, my mom took me to the doctor with that sheet. Remember I told you when I got to that rehab, they started giving me medication. Well, they gave that to my mom, and we went to the doctor, and she asked the doctor like, "Hey, does my son need to keep taking this?" And the doctor looked at this sheet of medication, horrified. He was like, "They were giving this to your son?" He's like, "This is like an extremely high dose of an adult schizophrenic medication." He's like, "Just this drug alone would make someone crawl in their skin."
Right.
So she's like,
go insane.
Yeah, she's like, "Do you think this is why all that shit happened with the cops?" And the doctor was like, 100%. Like they basically put him into like a state of insanity with this schizophrenic medication. And I don't remember, I had never talked to a psychiatrist. It was just as soon as I got there, the staff member started giving me this medication, which I imagine is their protocol to basically zombify their patients, So I ended up fighting the case for, over a year, on the grounds of that rehab giving me this medicine. And that's why I ended up fighting the cops, But I had a public defender. The rehab wouldn't release any information. They kept like postponing. I had to keep driving to Selmar, which is like a 2-hour drive. Postponed, doesn't want to release. And then they got to the point where they're like, "Okay, well, if you want to get this information released, we're going to press charges. We have like 10 staff members that you assaulted. You did a breaking and entering on a residential house. You did this." It was like all these things. They're like, "If you want to get us involved in this case, we're going to press charges on you for all this shit." So I went to court one day, and they're like, "Yo, they're offering you a plea. You do 30 days. We're going to drop," because the charges ended up being assault and battery on 2 LAPD sheriffs and resisting arrest. And they're like, "We're going to drop the assault and batteries, just get you for resisting arrest, and you'll do 30 days in juvenile hall, and that'll be it." So I was just like, I was so tired of doing court, and I just didn't. And then during that time that's when I started smoking meth.
Well, in the whole thing though, your like mother was trying to help you out because she knew you were on drugs. You wound up getting medicated by this team to the point of psychosis. And it probably buys you a little time with your mom because all of a sudden you're the victim. But when you go home, like how bad is the drug use? Even in that whole court period?
Oh, it was worse. It got exponentially worse. Between getting out of juvenile hall, or between the crime and getting sentenced is when I really, like, my narcotic use really started ramping up. So it was bad. Yeah. Ultimately,
And do you think it was like, do you think it was confusing for your mom? Because it's like, meanwhile, she's sending you to the spot where they fucking medicate you, like, to the point of making you insane. And now she can't feel comfortable sending you to another spot. You have to go into juvie. Your drug use is off the charts, but she doesn't feel safe getting you treatment.
I don't know. I don't know what they were experiencing at the time, mentally and emotionally. I know what they were experiencing emotionally from my drug use got much worse than it was at that time. You know, that at a certain point,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say at a certain point, they probably wished I was just doing cough medicine again. You know, they're probably
totally.
Remember when?
Where does the meth come in? Where does the
meth came in?
When does the meth come in?
So when I was 17. So I believe it was between committing that crime, the assault on the police officers, and getting sentenced is when the meth came in. And I was doing coke a lot. Between that period, I started doing coke like all day, every day. And it was me, my best friend, and this girl. And we hit up the Coke Connect, and we hit up like a couple of them, and all three of them were at the same place at this girl's house. All three of the plugs. So we go to this girl's house. It was another girl that we went to school with. We walk in this house, and they're in like this little side room, and they had like a plate or a mirror with a big mound of Coke on it, you know, because all our guys were there together. You know, it was like a superhero fucking movie where like you got Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man all in the same movie, you know. So we go in there. They're in like this weird little side room. There's like a U of couches, you know. It's like a room made for hanging out. Start passing this plate around, and then these older people start showing up to this room. They're probably like 30, you know, and we're 17. They start sitting in this room with us, and we're passing them the plate, and they're like, "No, it's all right." I remember thinking, like, what is wrong with you guys? There's this giant mountain of cocaine. You guys don't want to do any? So we're hanging out there for a little bit, and this old Asian man comes out. The girl whose house it was, she was an Asian girl. And it was like in a movie. It was like the bad guy on fucking Kill Bill, or like the samurai, you know. He has like this long white beard. He has no shirt on. I remember he had like these weird baggy sweatpants on, no shoes. And he comes out of nowhere, and it was almost like a scene from a movie. Like, he comes out and he sits cross-legged on one of these couches in this little U shape that we're sitting in, and he pulls out an oil burner, a meth pipe. And I'd never seen one at the time. Like, it triggered my mind, like, oh, this is a meth pipe, you know. And he pulls it out and he starts hitting it, and he hands it to his friends that are there. And me and my buddy, who was my buddy for years, like, we look at each other, you know, I don't even think we had to say anything. We just looked at each other, and he's like, let's do it, dude. And I'm like, all right, you know. So that the old Asian guy, like, you know, notions to us, like, you guys want to hit it? And we're like, yeah, you know, like, we don't know what we're doing, but yeah, we want to do it, you know. So we end up getting all spun out. We started smoking meth, and then I remember leaving that night, and I walked home. I got home, and then I knew someone who sold meth. One of my coke dealers sold meth. So the next time I called my coke dealer, I was like, hey man, let me get a 20. But I was like, let me get a 20 of meth. Like, right away, I'm like, yo, coke, no more coke. Like, I'm a fucking meth guy, you know? So I just started buying meth. Well, when I started buying meth, I isolated myself from all my coke friends, because I'm like, oh, I can't let people know that I'm doing meth now. No one's going to be okay with that. So probably a couple months later, I ended up talking to my friend that I smoked meth with that night, who was like my best friend. And then now I didn't talk to him for 2 months. And he's like, hey, he's like, come over to my house. I'm like, all right. So I go over to his house, and I'm like, hey man, I got to tell you something. He's like, what's up? I was like, I've been smoking meth every day since that night at that girl's house. And he starts laughing and he pulls out a meth pipe and he's like, so have I.
Me too.
Yeah. So,
oh man. So what was it about what did you like more about meth than coke? Just its intensity? Like it's bang for the buck, the whole thing?
I mean, I don't want to champion meth. Obviously, ultimately, meth will ruin your life. You know, at the end of the timeline, meth will ruin your life. But meth is a fucking much superior, with a much superior high than cocaine. Like the onset, the intensity, the euphoria, the time that it lasts, the like productivity, the like energy, you don't get like a gross feeling like with cocaine. Like cocaine will like make your heart go crazy. It makes your mouth all gross. It makes your dick not work. Gives you anxiety. It wears off super fast. But meth was like, I would do a little bit of meth and I would just be high for, 13 hours and then do a little more and then just be high.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because I talk to so many drug addicts with the show and stuff. And I mean, like, it's all brain chemistry. Like for somebody, like meth makes them feel exactly the way you described coke made you feel. And for somebody else, like they can't fucking do heroin. Heroin hits them in a way that it's not. It's crazy how it's totally shit is reliant on. It's also probably what kind, like where are you getting the meth from, and where are you when you got the meth, and where's the coke coming from?
Yeah.
What's the coke like?
I mean, even the year.
It's interesting. Like so many people.
Even the year that you were doing the meth is a big proponent on if you liked it or not,
right. How was it? I mean, the year that I did meth, I was like, it did not hit me nicely. And I was in California and it was 2001, but I was never an upper person. You know what I mean? Uppers never hit me in a way that I wanted to feel like that. It's just, it's amazing how addiction hits us all the same way, but it's like these little characteristics of the actual catch different people differently.
Yeah.
So you're fucking strung out on meth, and what happens?
So I ended up that came to not a crashing halt, but my parents found out about the meth pretty quick. That one, they knew something was up. I started selling my shit that I had, like my guitars and my keyboards and my iPods and my guitar pedals. I just started instantly selling everything. I was still doing the receipt thing, but then sometimes I was like, And I remember one day I was talking to someone, and then around the same time I learned how to make crack, because I'm still doing coke. I'm mostly doing meth, but like I'm doing everything. I'm mixing everything together, And I found out how to make crack. So I had like a gram of cocaine. I had meth. I ended up, making like a little bit of crack. I was talking to someone on my computer on AOL Instant Messenger about how I was making crack. And then I was talking to someone about meeting up to go get this fucking, I was going to trade something for a bag of meth. And I was talking to this girl and she was supposed to pick me up. And like, it was just like conversations on my computer about what I was doing that day. Drugs. And I ended up leaving to go meet up with a connect or something, and my mom went into my room and went on my computer, and it was just everything was just on there. So she finds the conversations about the crack, she finds the conversations about the coke, she finds the meth conversations, and then now she does it right after that. She does a full sweep of my room. So she finds like a light bulb with like cooked in it. She finds like a couple meth pipes. She just finds like a holy grail of like paraphernalia. And I think she calls me. She's like, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I'm like, "Nothing." She's like, "I know what you're fucking doing right now. And she just goes off. So now I'm like, well, I guess I can't go home. And that like kind of that day was like my first experience of choosing over somewhere to live. Because it didn't even cross my mind like, okay, time to face the music and not do and go home and get better. I was like, okay, dude, time to just fucking figure something else out where I could do drugs,
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm not going home. I'm not done with this. But I can't imagine like kind of a worse thing for a parent to find than like I learned how to make crack today. That's like the
Yeah.
thing. It's one thing to like find somebody smoking weed or I smoked weed, but I've learned how to make crack. It's
Yeah.
like that's a whole other thing to find out.
Yeah,
So where did you go?
I don't remember where I went. I probably hit up my friend, or I think I was supposed to meet up with that girl. I don't remember where I went, but I just remember there was like a sense of freedom where I was like, I don't have to listen to my parents. Like it was like, I mean, I had been microdosing Defiance, you know, as I was growing up, but this was the moment where I'm like, no one can stop me. I could do whatever the fuck I want. I could go be a drug addict on the street, you know, and I just, that's what I did. You know, I just went harder and then just started, you know, fucking around. And then I did end up going back to my parents' house at some point, not immediately. And then did the whole classic, like lying, hiding, saying I'm not getting high anymore, but getting high. And then until it just escalated into, worse. So what happened is I did meth for like a year straight. And then I stopped doing meth, maybe for almost a year. I don't know how long it was. I was still doing coke. I was still drinking. I had stopped doing the Robitussin or the triple C's. I had stopped smoking meth. So for the most part, with just the alcohol and the cocaine, I was still able to function. I ended up getting a job. I worked as a pizza delivery guy. I was still drinking all the time, doing coke. But I was like, you know, I was participating. And then I met this girl, and she smoked meth. And then we all know how that story ends. I started smoking meth with this girl. Then I start smoking meth with her friend. And then I lose my job. I lose my car. And then that's when I go to big boy jail for the first time. And then from there, then it was just, I was basically on the street.
How bad of a tweaker did you become initially with the girl and her friends? Like were you living with them? And then what did you get busted for?
So a lot of stuff, but I started smoking. I still worked at that pizza place. So I was getting a weekly check or every 2-week check. And these girls were already seasoned tweakers. So they, you know, like once you're a drug addict, like if a new drug addict comes into the circle who has a job, they're like fucking, you hit the jackpot, you know? So I started picking up with these girls, and I would pick up like a 40 or whatever. And a 40 would last me like a week, 2 weeks maybe. You know, I would just smoke a little bit and go to work, get off work, smoke a little bit. And then it just like progressively got worse and worse. I started not having money to put gas in my truck to make the deliveries at the pizza place. I started stealing money out of the register at the pizza place. I started losing a bunch of weight because now I'm in the bathroom at the pizza place every 20 minutes, taking a hit of my pipe, going on a delivery, smoking meth in front of the house, taking in their pizzas, you know, and then I ended up getting fired. I think I was already living in my truck. I was already got kicked out.
Are there any classic crazy pizza delivery stories?
No, not so much with the pizza delivery stories, because I wasn't like too crazy at the time yet. I was still like managing like being a functional tweaker, you know. I was still like sleeping sometimes and like eating,
right.
And you know, so like the sickness of like my mind wasn't set in yet, you know. So I was living in my truck working at the pizza place. And then I get fired from the pizza place. I start committing more crimes to make up for that money because I still need to get high. I end up getting in some weird situation with some girl, and she has someone break the windows out of my truck. So now I'm driving around this truck with no fucking windows, all tweaked out, no job.
Wait, what did you do to the girl that they needed to smash your windows?
So I was at a Connect's house in downtown, and me and this girl got in an argument about something stupid. She drove me to the Connect's house. We all get all spun out at this house. We get in some sort of weird, like, verbal argument, and she leaves. She leaves me at this house. And I'm like calling her back, and I'm like, dude, what the fuck? Like, come get me, like, come pick me up, whatever, So she comes back to the house. She gets the other person that we were with, and she's like, Jimmy can't come. Because I was being like an asshole to her, whatever the argument was about. So she's in her car in front of this tweaker house. The other person we're with gets in the car, and she won't let me in. And she has the window like halfway down. We're like arguing, and I'm like, let me in the fucking car, dude. Just unlock the door. Let me in the car. Just like, stop being dumb, whatever. And she had her iPhone was sitting, and at the time, iPhones were like rare. It wasn't like a common thing. Like, if you had an iPhone, like, it was a lot of money, and not everyone had them. And she was sitting there, and her iPhone was sitting on her lap. And I remember, her story's different, but I remember thinking I was going to grab her phone and have her phone to make her unlock the doors so she would let me in the car. So I reach in, I grab her phone off her lap. I reach my hand out. She snatches the phone out of my hand. She rolls up the window and she takes off. Well, she starts calling people, and she's like, fucking Jimmy tried setting me up to rob me. He tried stealing my phone. He fucking called me to this house, and they surrounded it. Turned into this big fucking tweaker story. So she tells all these people that I tried setting her up, gives them no context of what was going on. And then these guys come and they fucking break the windows out of my fucking truck. They broke the windows out of my truck and slashed all 4 of my tires.
Which is not only your truck, it's your house.
It's my house. Yeah. Yeah. So I remember I got some money somehow, probably doing receipts or whatever. I went to where my truck was at with all the tires slashed. I took off the tires one by one and rolled them to a used tire store and had them put used tires, like $20 a piece or whatever. Rolled the tire back, rolled the next tire to this used tire store, had them until I replaced all 4 tires on my truck that way. Yeah. And then, so I ended up.
Why'd you get busted though? How did you get busted and going to jail?
I don't remember which one was first, but I ended up getting a possession charge. I was driving down the street in my truck with the windows broken out. I had no t-shirt on. It was like 113 degrees. I'm like driving this truck all tweaked out. I had a meth pipe in my sock. I'm like sweating. My fuel pump had been going out in my truck. And so my truck was not accelerating past like 10 miles per hour. And I'm driving down the street just like your cliche fucking tweaker. Broken windows, no shirt, sweating. Sure. Truck isn't running. And I'm going up the street and I see there's a cop coming the same way that I'm going. And I'm like, fuck. So I just like turned on the first street that I saw. And the cop follows me in, pulls me over. He gets me out. He puts me back in my truck. He starts like taking my license and registration to his car. And he's like, hold on a second. He's like, get out of the car. He's like, let me search you. And I'm like, fuck. So he searches me. I have a meth pipe in my sock. And I end up getting possession of a controlled substance. But then after that, it was just like, I was going to jail like every few months. Like possession, trespassing, stolen property, petty theft, fucking... My parents ended up getting a restraining order on me because I was just robbing them and, literally breaking into their house when they weren't home and robbing their house. So I don't think they wanted to get me for like residential burglary, but they ended up getting a restraining order. And so I violated that a few times. And then I ended up getting another possession. It's just like tweaker shit, just compiled. I think within that last 4-year span of me smoking meth before I got sober, I probably went to jail like, I don't know, I probably got arrested 30 times, but probably actually got housed maybe 13 or 14 times.
And how long were you living on the streets in Riverside, or like,
I was living on
going from place to place, and like
it was kind of a mixture. Like there was I was going place to place when I could, even the trap houses, you can outstay your welcome, so there was like trap houses I would stay at, like tweaker pads, and you could buy yourself about as much time as your bag is big, so I would do that. I'd go to another pad. I would go to this guy's house. And then a lot of the times I was just sleeping outside. I was staying up for like 3 or 4 days at a time. So I didn't have to sleep very often. I started sleeping in laundry rooms of apartment complexes. One of my main places I slept was on the roof of a 7-Eleven. It had like a ladder with a lock, but the lock was always dummy locked. So I would just take that lock up and then climb up this ladder, and I would just sleep on the roof of the 7-Eleven. And that was like my main hub where I would sleep. And then sometimes just parks, like RVs in people's front yards that I knew of, and like, just shit like that. And then I ended up, I had a friend that was smoking meth with me that was more functional, normal. And he was renting a room out of this house where it was just like, everyone was just losing their mind on drugs in this house. So I stayed there for a while, and then right before I got sober, I had a buddy who was dating this girl, and they lived with the mom. The mom was losing the house. She was like fucked up on pills and alcohol, and I started staying with them. It was just like a fucked up house. No one cared that I was on meth, So I went over there and I started bringing them like, offerings, because I was a thief. So I'd be like, hey, you guys want this? You guys want this? You guys, here's some money, So they started letting me stay at this house. Well, I ended up getting the mom. My buddy smoked meth. His girlfriend smoked meth. And then I ended up kind of getting the mom strung out on meth, which is, not my proudest moment, but it happens. And they end up losing the house.
She got herself strung out on meth.
Yeah.
You didn't make her do it.
No.
You can blame yourself, but I mean, she made her choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, she was already doing pretty bad, just not on that drug yet,
Exactly. Don't blame yourself. You have enough problems. Don't blame yourself for that.
Yeah.
Keep going. I'm with you.
So they end up losing the house that they were staying at. They get like a state voucher for a hotel, to live in a hotel, like a relief fund. So now I'm living in this hotel with my buddy, his now pregnant girlfriend, the mom, and me. I'm smoked out. The mom would eat meth. She's fucked up. My buddy's fucked up. The girlfriend's sober because she's pregnant. We end up using that voucher in that hotel. I end up getting the hotel raided by the cops, the whole fucking thing. And they got like a Section 8 apartment complex, like the sketchiest place I've ever lived in my entire life. No one there had a job, and everyone was a tweaker. Everyone was like a gang member and a tweaker. It was just like this hub of debauchery and foul behavior in like this one apartment complex. So I live there with them. And then when I'm living there, I start fucking the mom.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah. I start fucking my buddy's girlfriend's mom, who's twice my age.
How old was she?
She was like 46 years old.
And you were 23.
I was 23. Yeah.
Did she have any money, or she had no money either?
She had an apartment.
Right.
No, I don't.
And you fell into that. You fell into the classic junkie love. Only even better because did your friend get angry at you, or did the girlfriend get angry at you?
Nah, dude, no one gave a fuck. Everyone was just like, it was a mess. No one cared. It made sense. Like all of a sudden now Jimmy's fucking the mom. Like it just fit right in with the.
I was gonna ask you, but I figured it was gonna be like, how could I say were you fucking the mom? But I'm glad you were.
I wasn't. I initially wasn't fucking the mom, but you smoke enough meth around someone that you're living with, it just happens, dude. It just happened, and then I end up
because can you I know you probably don't want to say this, but can you tell us the moment that it goes from platonic friend of girlfriend's mother to you're fucking the mother?
Well, the mom wasn't bad looking. She was a good looking lady. So that helped, because I was always like damn, she's not bad looking, you know.
She's kind of hot.
And then we had it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and my buddy and his chick lived in the room, and then me and the mom lived in the living room on couches on the opposite side of the apartment. So we would just like before bed, we would just be like laying in these couches, like just like bullshitting with each other. And then somehow she was like, so one of us was like, had the idea of sleeping on the same couch, you know, like we were all fucking spun out. We both knew what we were doing, you know, and I just end up, you know, fucking the mom that night. And then I'm like, well, I live here and now I'm sleeping with this girl, so it might as well. I mean, granted, she wasn't the only girl I was sleeping at. I was a fucking tweaker, you know. I was fucking, you know, but it was just like some in-house vagina, I guess, you know.
Yeah, yes.
So that ends up going bad.
So, okay. Oh no, how could that have gone bad? I was sure you were going to wind up marrying the mom and everything was going to work out really good.
Yeah. I end up during this time I'm living at the apartment, I end up becoming friends with the dealer. So the big fucking guy took a liking to me. For whatever reason, like he thought I was cool or charismatic. Like I would bring him so much shit. I remember he was like, yo, I heard you're good at stealing shit. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm the best. I was so good at stealing shit. That was my thing. He's like, all right, I'm going to take you to Victoria Gardens. It's like this big shopping mall in the Inland Empire. I went with him and my homegirl, and this was the first time I met that guy. And he's like, give me some Levi's and like some like nice sunglasses or something. So I'm like, all right, just let me go by myself. So they went to do whatever they were doing, and I went into this mall. And I remember within 30 minutes, I called them and I was like, hey, I got the shit that you wanted. I like left. I was like, come meet me over here. So they come and meet me, and I have like fucking 5 pairs of Oakleys and like a fucking stack of fucking Levi's and all this shit. And I was like, oh, by the way, I stole this bike. I need you guys to go take me to, like, within like 30 minutes, I had like stolen like thousands of dollars worth of shit. And it just like blew his mind. He was like, oh, dude, this guy's, you know. So from that day, this guy took a liking to me because he's like, oh, this guy's like a, you know, he's not a fucking idiot. He's just a drug addict.
Yeah, but it's like that guy probably had plenty of money to buy anything. And he's like, I'm going to bring this magic stealing tweaker with me. Just like some parlor trick shit. You know what I mean?
For
but,
sure.
I get it. So he's like, this kid can get, he's a prodigy.
Yeah.
He's a criminal prodigy and I want him with me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So what develops?
So
I'm with you.
he takes a liking to me. So now I'm buddies with this guy. And, he's, like I said, he's the big guy, you know? So there was times I would go with him somewhere. He'd be like, yo, we need to go on this trip, you know? And he'd be like, here's $500 just to be his fucking road dog, you know? And we'd go and fucking get packages like of meth, you know, like I'd never seen before. And then we'd go back to his house and he would just be like, here, like give me money, put a big, you know, gigantic fucking amount in my hand, and then I would just sit there and he would just like, even though I'm this far removed from these stories, and that guy's in prison now for like the rest of his life. I still feel weird talking about certain details, but I sat there with him before, and I watched him quadruple, if not more, his money in a couple hours. Because he was like the guy who was getting the guy, you know. So it was just like I would get there, I'd sit with him, we'd be like have a gigantic bowl, and it was just like a revolving door for hours, like people just like giving him money. And I was just like, oh, this is the side of dealing that you hear about
the profitable side,
because as much as he smoked meth, he wasn't a tweaker, he was a businessman. Like he didn't get weird, he never lost his ability to like talk, he never did, because he was in it for the money, and he was a fucking good, like he did all the shit that you needed to do to, like, you know, with your money, like once you had it, and like washing it, and like all, you know, he was on top of his shit. But now I have access to pretty much as I want, you know, and he's trying to, he's giving
it to you for free, or is he giving you crazy deals?
He gave me a bunch initially for free. He gave me money, and he gave me dope, and he was adopting me as his protege. He was teaching me, but at the time I didn't get it. I was just like, oh, all the meth I could smoke. But he saw something in me that he knew I had something that could, you know, benefit us both. And I was just blowing it. I was smoking as much of it as I could, selling as little amount as I could, just to make enough to re-up, because he was giving it to me for so cheap that I could just sell, like,
right.
I could sell a little bit of what he was giving me, and then buy it back from him, buy that much again from him, but still have $0, you know. And
it's very, very hard for any actual drug addict to sell drugs. It's like impossible for an actual drug addict to be good at selling, I think.
Oh yeah, no, it's a certain kind of person. Like I said, you have to be more motivated by the monetary part of it, and less about the
getting
use.
High.
Yeah.
And
I remember him pulling me aside once,
but it's a different addiction, right?
Yeah.
Here, go ahead.
He pulled me aside, and he's like, "What are you doing, dude?"
He pulled you aside, and what did he say?
He's like, "What are you doing, dude?" He's like, "I'm giving you this crazy opportunity where you could fucking get out of this fucked up situation that you're in, like living in the streets and being broke and like doing all this tweaker shit." He's like, "You're fucking blowing it, dude." He's like, "Do you want to be fuck, dude, I wish I remember what he said, because he was smart as fuck. Like I was saying, he was a businessman. So he had like a businessman mindset, and he would like say things that was like highly more advanced than my capability of understanding at the time, you know? Like he was being like a Tony Robbins of crystal meth sales, you know? And he's like, "Do you want to be a fucking supplier, or do you want to be a fucking make money, you know?" He's like, "Do you want to give people dope, or do you want to fucking make money, you know?" And
and you're like, "I just want to be high."
I was like,
I just want to never not be high.
Yeah.
That's all you want.
Yeah. But I mean, this guy had it all, dude. He had the fucking girls, he had the money, he had the cars, he had like, he was fucking doing it, you know? I just wasn't ready, you know? I wasn't ready for that type of fucking responsibility. And then he ended up getting busted, and he's doing a lot of time. I think I read an article. It said he's going to be in prison the rest of his life. But anyways,
were you around when he got busted?
Not with him. So he ended up getting raided. He bailed out. He walked to that apartment that I was staying at with that old lady and rang the doorbell at like 2 a.m. And he was like, because it wasn't too far from the jail where he got released. Tells us that he got raided. He's out on bail. He's still fucking doing the most. He ends up fucking skipping bail. He's selling dope. He skipped bail. He ends up going up to the mountains, renting a cabin, on the run. The cops find out where he's at, and from the article I read, he ended up barricading himself in this fucking cabin. the cops finally get in. He has a bunch of meth. He has his crimes from skipping bail, and there's like a bunch of illegal firearms in there. Yeah, and he had been a.
What happens to you? And what's all the noise over there? What's all that?
Oh,
Someone's chopping lines. What's going on over there?
That was me tapping the screwdriver on the.
Stop tapping the thing.
Sorry, dude.
Not good. It's not good for recording.
Yeah.
Fucking. So what happens to you?
Nothing happens to me. I just go back to just being a tweaker. Like he ended up before he got. I was already sober by the time he actually went to prison for being on the run. But when his house got raided and he was like kind of fell off, and then he was like on the run in hotels and like he was just like he was no longer accessible. Like he was just like too far, running around, like hiding, like doing all this shit, you know. So I just went back to just like my normal tweaker hustle, but at this point I was so strung out, and so like my psychosis was so bad, that lady couldn't handle it anymore that I was living with. My buddy had ended up getting busted for violating his supervised release, which is essentially house arrest. So he was in jail. The baby was born. I lived with his girlfriend, a newborn baby, and my girlfriend, and we're all fucked up on meth. I'm like getting super crazy paranoid. I won't like leave the apartment. So she ends up leaving the apartment. She moves to a sober living. Her daughter, and the baby, they moved to a sober living. And I'm just squatting in this apartment with no electricity, no running water, just tweaked out. I'm like at my worst. My crimes started getting worse. I started like doing stuff with houses that I wasn't supposed to be in, and you know, et cetera, et cetera. And she ends up leaving, and now I'm just squatting in this apartment. The managers come and they're like, "Yo, dude, we're gonna call the cops if you don't leave." I ended up leaving that day, and now I'm back on the street. I had been living at an apartment for like 6 months, or basically living inside for almost 6 months, and now I'm back on the street. So I'm like, "Fuck, I need a good come up today." So I end up going to my parents' house, which I'm not supposed to be at because they have a restraining order, and I fucking robbed my parents' house. They didn't have much, but I ended up getting like, it was like $100 worth of change, which was fucking good enough for me. I pour the $100 in like a little ice chest. I go buy a bag of meth. I buy a pipe. I go buy 2 porno magazines. I get high. I still have like $30 left or whatever. I'm riding down the street on a bicycle with this ice chest filled with change, with 2 porno magazines crumpled into balls in the ice chest. I got a meth pipe with a bag of meth rolled down the neck, wrapped around toilet paper down the front of my underwear, riding down the street, and the cops drive by me. And I'm like, fuck. And I look at the cop.
Every time.
Every time, dude. I look at the cop looks at me. I'm like, fuck. The cop busts a fucking U-turn, pulls out to me, and then she's like, "Hey, what's up, James?" You know, because at the time, every cop in the whole fucking city knew me on a first name basis by this point, you know?
Right.
So she's like, "What you got in that bag? A bunch of shit from your parents' house?" And I was like, "Nah." So she jumps out. She knows I'm on probation. So she's probation or parole. I'm like, probation. So I get handcuffed right away. She opens the bag and she's like, "Oh, look." She's like, "A bunch of change that your mom said that you stole from their house. That's how funny is that, you know?" She pulls out these fucking nasty porno magazines, you know, and she runs my name, and I had 9 arrest warrants at this time. So she's like, "Oh, you got 9 warrants, and now we're gonna take you in for possession of stolen property." I want to say it was a felony possession of stolen property. And then I had that meth pipe with a fucking bag of meth down the front of my boxers, and she searched me and didn't find it. So she handcuffs me, takes me into the fucking cop car. And the whole time I'm like, dude, I'm fucked already. If I get caught with this fucking meth, I'm super fucked. Um, so the whole time I'm like waiting for an opportunity to like try and get this fucking bag of fucking meth down my pants, you know? So we end up going to the police station. She does all the paperwork, which is a lot. It takes a long time to do, arrest paperwork. And I think especially because she was doing fucking 9 cases. She was arresting me for 9 things. So we must have been at this fucking police station for like 8 hours, dude. And I'm handcuffed to this stainless steel bench, sitting there while she's doing paperwork, like the whole time, like, how am I going to get rid of this fucking pipe? So we end up leaving that police station. We drive to the downtown police station where she has to do more paperwork. I'm handcuffed to another stainless steel thing, and I'm like, dude, I need to get rid of this fucking pipe somehow. I'm so fucked. We're probably there for like another 6 hours, dude, doing paperwork at this second police station. She finally finishes up. She puts me in the back of the cop car. We start backing out in the cop car. And I had been to this jail so many times that I know once you go down this tunnel, there's signs everywhere that say if you bring past this point, it's a new crime because you're bringing or firearms onto state property or whatever, you know?
And you have meth and the pipe in your pants.
Yeah, on my pants. So she starts backing out and I'm like, hey, I got to tell you something. And she's like, what? I was like, I got a bag of meth and a pipe down the front of my boxers. And she's like, you fucking motherfucker. Like she had no problem expressing her upset.
Right.
So she gets on the phone with her lieutenant. And she's like, this stupid motherfucker, I just did all his fucking paperwork for 12 fucking hours. And he just tells me right now that he has a fucking pipe and a bag of dope on him. And she's pissed because, like, I think 1, it's going to make her look bad. And 2, she's going to have to do all that paperwork again. So she gets off the phone. She parks the car. Her lieutenant, I'm assuming it was her lieutenant, comes around, opens the door, and he's like, where's it at? I tell him. He reaches his hand down my pants. He pulls it out, and he throws it on the floorboard of the cop car and slams the door all pissed off. And we start moving again, and we start going down in the tunnel. And I'm like, hey, what's going to happen with that? And I remember she looks at me in the rearview mirror, and she's like, we're just going to pretend like that didn't happen. But next time you run into me or one of my colleagues out in the streets, I want you to remember that I just did this for you.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, fuck. So I ended up getting booked. I went to court like 3 days later. They ran everything concurrent. I ended up doing 90 days for all 10 charges.
Pretty amazing.
And then got out. But that day, that's my sober day.
Really?
Yeah.
How did you make that happen when you were in there for 90 days? Were you just like, because like you in all of these stories, and I appreciate the high octaneness of the stories, but is recovery anywhere in your head in all of that shit? Like, are you like, this is fucked up, I don't like this life?
Yeah. So my thing was always like, when I was doing, I was always like, I'm not going to ruin my high by fucking feeling guilty about doing, because I would hang out with people
Sure.
and they would be like, we'd be smoking meth and they'd be like, fuck, I really don't want to do this anymore. Like, I need to go to rehab. And I'd be like, shut the fuck up. Like, we're fucking smoking meth. Let's just smoke meth. Like, why are you like, if you're so guilty about it, then don't fucking get high, you know?
Don't ruin my time.
Yeah,
my good meth smoking.
Don't
time.
fucking ruin my day with your fucking recovery bullshit, you know? But at the same time, like, I knew I was suffering and I knew I was like in a non-optimal state of my life. So what would happen is when I would get busted, because I would go to jail so often, when I'd be in jail, I would be like, I want to get sober. You know, I'd be sleeping on the street with no money, fucking with 2 different pairs of shoes on, like all tweaked out. And then I'd go to jail. I would come off and I would like tell myself like, oh, I'm going to stay sober when I got out. And I thought just saying I want to stay sober when I get out was going to be enough to keep me sober. Like, I just was like, oh, you just decide one day that you want to be sober, and like, you know, so I'd end up getting released from jail and then lasting like 3 days, and would be smoking meth again, you know. So each time I went to jail, I kind of had a new experience of failure that I could reflect on.
Right.
Like, why did I want to get sober and fail last time? Like, what do I have to change this time, you know? So the last time I got busted, I was like, okay, dude, here we go. Another shot. We're going to be in here for 3 months. Let's fucking figure it out, you know? So I just started like praying and repeating mantras and meditating and reading and working out, and like would write down like a game plan. I would like write down what I need to do to stay sober. I would write down like different mental exercises I needed to do. And I was just grinding every single day. I was just like meditating and repeating these affirmations and reading and exercising. And I just like got this like positive momentum. And I had a game plan for when I got out, you know, like as far as like, I knew at that point I couldn't be involved with any of the people that I had done drugs with, because the time I had failed before is I thought that I could be sober and fuck girls that were tweaking still. And that was my bad. I can't do that. Cause my crystal meth addiction was also always tied to sex, you know, as most people's are. So that was part of my thing, you know, and I when I got out, I'm like, I need to go get a gym membership. So I just started going to the gym. Like I almost was in the gym those first few months. Once I got released so much, I wouldn't have even had time to think about doing. It's like I would wake up, go to the gym, come home, eat, go back to the gym, come home, eat, and then go back to the gym every single day. It's almost hard to believe, or when I tell people that, like, I don't think people realize I was actually going to the gym 3 times a day. And my whole day was just consumed with going to the gym. And then like I started painting again and creating art again. And I would just wake up, go to the gym, eat, go to the gym, eat, go to the gym, like every single day. Like that's all I did. And I just gained this fucking momentum. And I knew it was important for me to start like keeping my word and being like honest. Like honesty was a big part of my sobriety, you know, like I needed to be honest with myself. And I needed to be honest with everyone around me. And the only way I felt comfortable being completely honest with everyone is if I was doing the right thing, you know? So I just was like being honest. I was like trying my best. I was going to the gym. I was meditating. I was eating right. And I just like, I met a girl and like, I fucking just had this fucking momentum of positivity. And, I think I just started attracting like things to me, you know? So by the time I was like a year or 2 sober, I had gotten a job offer from someone. I got that job. It was like an entry-level job. I started, you know, it was still a pretty good job. And then I moved up in this job and still stayed sober, moved up, started making more money. And then by like, I was making a lot of money. And it was just like a progression, you know, like do the right thing, stay healthy, do the right thing, treat people good. And like, it was just like opening up this life of opportunities from me and then I ended up buying my house when I was 30, you know, so I was living on the street when I was 23. And then just started on this path of like sobriety and doing what I believed was right. And then by the time I was 30, I bought my own house, you know.
That's amazing. Did you get into program stuff, into meetings?
So the first time I went to a meeting, I was a teenager. And my dad took me to a meeting. My dad's been sober for a long time. Same shit, like just yeah, he's sick just like me. Alcohol, meth, whatever, you know, he's been sober for quite a bit. But he didn't do the program, but he had been to NA meetings in his life, you know. So when I started struggling with drugs when I was a teenager, he took me to a meeting. So the first time I went to a meeting, I was probably 16. And then when I got sober, I would go every once in a while to the same meetings, like maybe once a week or like a couple times a month. But I didn't understand. I enjoyed the meetings because it'd give me perspective. People would say things that applied to me because I was just like them, like concepts or ideas that only an addict would understand. And when I'd go to those meetings, I'd be like, oh, like these people are just like me, But I didn't understand what step work was or like the 12-step program. All I knew was meetings. It was a place where people talked. And then by the time I realized that step work was part of those meetings, I was already successfully sober in my own head to where I'm like, I don't need that, But I still would go to meetings. I still go to meetings sometimes just because I think there's something.
So you never did it. You never did the steps.
No, never did the steps still to this day.
I think it's very, it's just like the way some hit people differently. Like everybody has their way out. Like it's not one way out. And, for you, it sounds like it was exercise, creativity, and like principles, spiritual principles, even if they're not born in the 12 steps.
Yeah, most definitely. And then also like I was very driven to make my life great. Like I wanted the story, I wanted to be sitting here with you one day and tell you the story, and I was like, the victory. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, I wanted to start from not only 0, but I'm starting from, -50. And I want to fucking
negative 150.
Yeah. And I want the fucking victory. And I use that as a driving force to become the best version of myself that I could. But I also have to say, I'm not perfect by any means. And, there's been some mistakes made along the way, not mistakes, but, things that happen in life where I'm like, I maybe didn't, do my most optimal behaving, and I think that's important too. And not to like sidetrack, but I think a lot of people, especially in any sort of public domain, and I'm guilty of doing this too, like they don't want to talk about parts of their life that are real, that other people could relate to, that might negate their character in that fucking spotlight, like it's easy to talk about.
Give me an example.
Just like, I've been sober for a while. I mean, not to get too much into this, but like shit with like in my sobriety, I was in like a less than ideal like relationship with someone, and it didn't turn out good. And like there was stuff that, I mean, there was no physical abuse or nothing like that, but there was a lot of shit that happened in that relationship that I'm not fucking proud of on both. And I'm sure that the partner feels the same way, and just shit like that. And it's like, it's in a weird position because it's like, I understand why people don't talk about shit like that publicly. Because,
well, it's hard because you have a persona and everybody wants everything to be good. And frankly, it's way easier and more fun to have people say, oh my God, you're so funny. You're so cool. You're so heroic. Not like, you don't need them to know you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to hear about it on the other side. It's a weird relationship, but like there is no way. I think the closer anyone thinks to not having anything fucked up, that's, things are going to be fucked up because that's what being human is.
Yeah, most definitely.
There's always going to be shit that you wish you handled differently. I feel stupid because I remember one time you and I were talking and you were telling me about something you were going through. And like, honestly, I've been so 12 stepped. I'm just so fucking 12 stepped that like, if anyone has a problem, I'm just like, go do the steps. It'll work out, like, and it doesn't, and that's not necessarily true. It's like, for me, that was how I got any kind of spiritual principles. But I don't do the right thing all the time at all. I make mistakes constantly. I regret shit I do constantly. I do my best, and sometimes I do good, and sometimes I don't, and that's life, right?
Yeah, most definitely. It sucks though, because people could benefit from others' honesty about their own mistakes. And sometimes once people reach a level of being exposed to an audience, they no longer want to help that audience by talking about their current struggles, like it's easy to talk about shit that I did 13 years ago because I'm disconnected from it, It's harder to be like publicly like, yo.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Well, because it's scary to be that vulnerable. You know what I mean? And then also to have anybody that you don't really know some shit about you that you aren't sure you want them to know.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's vulnerability like is great for a lot of things, but it also leaves you vulnerable.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you deal with it all the time. You talk.
I hear what you're saying though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do a pretty good job to be guarded about shit that really freaks me out about myself, because I don't want the whole audience to know every little bit of shit that I'm fearful of people knowing about me.
Yeah.
But I talk about it with my people though. You know what I mean? Like, I'll talk about it with my sponsor, and I talk about it with my friends, and I'll talk about it with people I trust. But I don't put it out there if it's something like that I'm not comfortable with.
You're not jumping on the mic and be like, yo, you guys need to hear about this argument I had yesterday with my wife.
Sometimes I'll do that. If it's funny enough, I'll do that. It's about the line between how entertaining can I make it and how much did I fuck up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How indictable am I in this story? And I hear what you're saying though. It's a fucking thin line. You know what I mean? And it's like, we want to be heroic. Like, I had the same feeling. Like, when I was at my worst, I always somewhere inside me knew I would come back. I had that feeling that I would come back. And I don't talk about that ever.
Yeah.
So you talking about that reminded me of that's an interesting point in general. Like, I wonder how many addicts are certain that they're going to come back and others that never think they're going to come back. I think that's a really interesting question in general.
Yeah. Some people just don't even think about it.
But
the reason I brought that up about that was because sometimes I feel like when I'm telling my origin story essentially, and this story of this grand, I fucking got sober and then got in shape and then got this job and bought a house and I'm the fucking champion. I fucking did it. I'm better than everyone here. I fucking am. There's almost a part of me that feels guilty by not being like, yo, I fucked up too. Like, I fuck up. Like, you're going to fuck up. Like, I don't want people to hear this story and then be like, well, I'm not like this guy because I fucking am like this. And it's like, no, dude, that I'm like that too. I just don't fucking add that part to my story because it doesn't make me seem as fucking cool,
100%.
But that's why I went on that little side tangent. You're always going to be human.
I love that side tangent. I think that's a very important side tangent. I really appreciate you coming on. We should do little recordings like this often.
I'm down,
man.
man.
This was a long one, but we should do little ones. And it's great to actually talk to you and see you and stuff, even though the connection once we started recording is horrible. But it's fucking, I really appreciate you coming on the show.
For sure, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm down to do it whenever. I got a never-ending supply.
And we're gonna do our California show. We're getting the date. I think right now it looks like June, but I'm not sure yet, so I'm not going to announce it. But you have to do something at it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
You have to do a story or a song or something.
I'll do something, dude. I was when you told me that you wrote me down for some time, I'm like, fuck. I went that next week and I did an open mic. I went and talked at an open mic to practice because I'm like, dude, I fucking hate being in front of an audience. But I'm like, I can't pass this up. Like, this is part of my fucking what I signed up for. So how'd
you do?
I did good. I mean, I freak out.
What'd you do at the open mic?
I just told the story. Just told a.
How'd it go?
It went good. It went good. The problem isn't once I'm on stage. The problem is leading up to it. I get fucking like hyper like upset. Like I fucking lose my. I start thinking like, fuck. I forget how words work. Like I forget how to string together sentences, and like I'm like, what the fuck was I gonna say? Like I don't even remember how my brain tells my mouth to talk anymore. Like I start getting sweaty, and I'm like, I need to just leave. Like I can't do this, you know? So I'm trying to get more comfortable with being on a stage so I don't have those moments leading up to it, you know?
You just have to say fuck it, like that, and it's gonna be you're good at what you do. You don't need to even think about it. But get practicing because our shit is coming up.
All right.
Get practicing.
I'll be there, dude.
All right, Jimmy.
All right, dude.